Thank you, Semra. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the two co-directors of the program, Dietrich and Günther, as well as the entire Morphomata team for making my stay here in Köln so wonderful for the last 9 months. It's really been a great experience, and also fellows from the previous semester and this semester who have broadened my knowledge about the elasticity of portraiture. So thank you all very much. Okay, following his victory at Actium in 31 BC and his great triple triumph in Rome in 29, Julius Caesar's adopted son Octavian celebrated his own achievements in official state media, most notably his coinage, with images that presented him unambiguously looking godlike, specifically like the god Neptune or Mars, as we see in the examples here. Official state media I define as any form of communication, verbal or visual, issued by the Roman Senate or the leader of the Roman state. In 27 BC, only 2 years after the celebration of his triple triumph, Octavian established what is known in Latin as the Principatus or Principate, and received from the Roman Senate the name Augustus. Oh, I forgot about that. Okay. As the Roman historian Tacitus stated, the Principate was neither a kingship nor a dictatorship, but a government of a princeps or first citizen. In theory, then, the princeps was primus inter pares, or first among equals. In all official Roman state media after the founding of the Principate, including state coinage, Augustus is therefore presented in a respectful republican manner, in the civic toga praetexta as a senator, in religious robes, or in cuirass like any military commander or imperator. His new relationship vis-a-vis the gods is even more striking. When shown in scenes of an official nature that involve various divinities, Augustus is represented togate as priest, and usually sacrificing respectfully and dutifully to the gods, like any Roman magistrate or citizen, as we see in the upper left relief. He is never shown in official art appearing with divinities as his companions, as we find in later Roman imperial art, like the relief on the lower right, representing the tyrannical Domitian accompanied by various divinities as he sets out on a military campaign. The presentation of Augustus in non-official state media and in private art could often be very different. As long as the imperial image was treated in a respectful manner, any municipal, colonial, or provincial government, or any foreign king or private person, was free to represent the princeps in visual media in any way during his lifetime, even in a godlike manner, as we see in these two examples. The same was true in literature and other written forms of communication. After death, and only if a princeps was deemed worthy, the Roman Senate could accord him divine honors, whereby he became a deus, that is, a state divinity. He was officially worshipped then like any immortal god, and could be represented nude or semi-nude, as we see Dius Augustus appearing in the center of the pediment of his temple in Rome, before which Caligula, as princeps, respectfully sacrifices to him. As for Caligula himself, contrary to much of the nonsense that has been written about him, he too was shown in official state media in a respectful republican manner, wearing either the toga or military armor. In none of his official inscriptions or images is he ever represented as godlike or with divine attributes. After Augustus's death and deification, he could also be represented as togate, but often also wearing the radiant crown of the Roman sun god Sol, a divine attribute clearly indicating his official divine status as Deus Augustus. Scholarship, however, has generally not recognized these clear distinctions between official state and non-official modes of representation of not only Augustus, but also members of his family, both during their lifetime and after their death. As a result, false impressions of Rome's leadership have often been created and perpetuated over time, especially, of course, in today's popular culture. In part, the sort of misinterpretation and misrepresentation is due to written accounts and rumors generated about the Caesars of the earlier imperial period by their detractors. With regard to visual media, since that is the focus of my talk, we can say that once an official image was issued, there could not be any control over how it could be viewed, understood, and interpreted. Hence, a closed image, that which was intended to bear a specific message or have a specific meaning, becomes an open image with regard to the way in which a viewer might interpret that image, leading to the possibility of ambiguity. It should be noted, however, that when dealing with antiquity, for which much evidence has been lost, we cannot always determine what constitutes a closed image, unless its specific meaning is self-evident within a known context or recorded by a viewer whose opinion or narrative, in turn, can also be open to interpretation. With regard to state images, as presented here in the case of Augustus, we may ask the following. Was certain official imagery also created to be intentionally ambiguous in order to evoke certain associations, especially those involving divinity, that were not in keeping with the official point of view or even contradicted it? Let us consider then a specific test case in which intentional visual ambiguity may have been introduced into official state imagery that would circumvent official state policy governing Augustan visual culture. In short, this would be like the proverbial having one's cake and eating it too, or, as I guess you would say in German, auf zwei Hochzeiten tanzen. In order to explore the question of intentional official visual ambiguity on the part of Augustus in the iconosphere of ancient Rome, we will first have to examine several key Augustan monuments in the Campus Martius in Rome, their interrelationship within a topographical context, and their projected imagery and symbolism in light of Augustan ideology. Given, of course, the fact that, like a slice of Swiss cheese, the ancient literary and archaeological record has holes in it, what I present here is itself an interpretation based not only on literary and material evidence, but also on circumstantial evidence. Unlike Mark Antony, who according to ancient sources planned to be buried in Alexandria, Octavian made it publicly known as part of his anti-Antonian propaganda that he, Octavian, would be buried in Rome like a true and loyal Roman. After his victories at Actium and Alexandria in 31 and 30, Octavian, with the wealth of Ptolemaic Egypt now at his disposal, began construction on a mausoleum for himself and members of his family in the northern Campus Martius in Rome. This was to be no ordinary tomb, but one that was intended to rival and surpass the great mausoleum of Halicarnassus, one of the seven wonders of the ancient world. Because of its known circumference, the mausoleum of Augustus is estimated to have stood about 150 Roman feet, or about 45 meters. Several years later, and after the founding of the Principate, Augustus's mausoleum was completed. Our only surviving contemporary literary source for the appearance of the finished mausoleum is the geographer Strabo, who notes in passing in his description of the city of Rome that, and I quote here, a bronze image of Augustus Caesar stood at the summit of his mausoleum, end quote. The term Strabo uses for image here is icon, which, of course, the English word icon is derived. In Greek, icon is a very general term for any form of image, be it a three-dimensional object or a two-dimensional sketch or painting. But what form Augustus's bronze image took is nowhere to be found in any surviving ancient account. In various reconstructions of the mausoleum, from that of Guglielmo Gatti in 1938 to that of Henna von Heesberg in 1994, it has always been assumed that this great bronze image of Augustus was a statua pedestres, or figure on foot. Seen in linear perspective, as in these two-dimensional line drawings, such a statue appears to be a reasonable reconstruction. Working with a graduate student trained in digital technology, I was able to reconceptualize in this computer model what I think such a large statue of Augustus on foot would have looked like atop his great dynastic tomb, as seen from below at the approximate height of an adult observer. When viewed in this way, at an angle easily and accurately simulated with the computer, a statue on foot, even a very large one, tends to get lost in the mass of the enormous mausoleum with its evergreen foliage on top, a detail that is also recorded by Strabo. Instead, on the basis of various pieces of circumstantial evidence, I suggest that this image took the form of a great gilded bronze figure of Augustus wearing his triumphal robes and standing in a four-horse chariot or quadriga of a Roman triumphator. In fact, when the mausoleum was being constructed shortly after Augustus's triple triumph in 29, quadrigate imagery was widely promulgated everywhere, especially on Augustus's official coinage, an example of which we see here. In these compared views of the mausoleum, seen from the perspective of a person standing in the Campus Martius, we can immediately see the striking difference between a figure of Augustus on foot and one of him raised up in a four-horse chariot. As I've already noted, the term icon is a very general one for any form of image. It is also a common term for a portrait image of any type. In fact, the word icon is also employed by another Greek author, Cassius Dio, to characterize chariot images of Augustus set atop arches over the Via Flaminia outside of Rome in 27 BC. In addition, what better way to cite the mausoleum of Halicarnassus with its crowning marble image of King Mausolus in chariot, as reported by ancient sources, and to outdo his mausoleum in height. Directly to the southwest of his mausoleum, Augustus erected another building complex which had great symbolic meaning for his Bildprogramm. Here were located two major closely interrelated and axially aligned monuments. To the east, and to the right here on the slide, was once located the monumental Areopagus Augusti, which was voted by the Senate in 13 BC to commemorate Augustus's safe return to Rome from Spain and Gaul. This altar of Augustan peace was dedicated in 9 BC, the Wiccenalia, or the 20th anniversary of his safe return from Egypt, to celebrate his triple triumph in Rome. To the west of the Areopagus, and in direct axial alignment with it, was erected a 30-meter-high red granite Egyptian obelisk, which Augustus had brought back from Egypt. It stands today re-erected in front of the Italian Parliament building in Montecitorio in Rome, as we see in the upper left part of the screen. In addition, the shaft and base of the obelisk, B in the plan here, and in the close-up on the left, is set not in a true north-south compass alignment, but turned to the northwest, so that its axis, as we see here, runs through the center of the mausoleum of Augustus, A in the plan, thereby establishing a symbolic connection with it. Functionally, the obelisk served as a colossal gnomon, or pointer, to cast a shadow in the manner of a sundial onto a long bronze meridian line to mark time and to check the accuracy of the Roman calendar over the course of the year. It also signified that Augustus, as Pontifex Maximus and guardian of the Roman calendar, now controlled time itself. This colossal solar device, known today as the Solarium or Horologium Augusti, was completed sometime between 10 and 9 BC and was dedicated by Augustus to the Roman sun god Sol for his victory over Alexandria in 30 BC and his incorporation of Egypt into the empire. I believe that the actual dedication ceremony probably took place on Augustus's birthday in 10 BC, which would have been the 20th anniversary of his victory over Cleopatra. On his birthday on September 23rd, celebrated in the Roman calendar as a Biduum, that is a 2-day event, the shadow cast by the obelisk with its bronze sphere atop would have traveled along the autumn equinoctial line over the course of the day, as we see in the image in the lower left. By the late afternoon on September 23rd, the shadow of the sphere atop the obelisk fell on the upper steps of the Areopagus, while on September 24th, the shadow just pierced its doorway. This solar event symbolized an effect that Augustus was born to bring not just peace, but peace through victory to the Roman world. Because of this and his other great achievements in life, the Roman Senate officially deified Augustus after his death in 14 AD, raising him to the status of a state god, or divus, as I mentioned before. As we also know from literary and archaeological evidence, Augustus's great accomplishments were inscribed on bronze pillars set up on either side of the entrance to his great mausoleum, as we see here, along with 2 pendant obelisks to underscore his victories. And Dietrich had also pointed this out in his June talk for the portrait conference. Like any ordinary Roman pater familias, Augustus possessed a genius, a divine spirit, something like a guardian angel that was worshipped in domestic cult, as we see here in this Lararium scene from the house of the Vetii in Pompeii. Except in the case of Augustus, as princeps and pater patriae, father of the nation, his genius was also officially worshipped in the state cult. He himself, however, was not officially worshipped by Romans as a living god. In fact, no princeps during his lifetime was ever worshipped by Romans officially as a living god. Even during the principate of the autocratic and rather flamboyant Nero, when a sycophantic Senate proposed to erect a temple to him as divus, Nero was horrified and forbade it, interpreting this proposal as a bad omen that could only result in his premature death, a prediction, of course, that came true not long afterwards. In the case of the sober and tradition-minded Augustus, no declaration nor prediction was ever made officially during his lifetime regarding his becoming a divus after death. That, of course, did not stop Augustan poets like Virgil and Horace from predicting his inevitable posthumous deification because of his achievements in life. Even the often satirical and un-Augustan poet Ovid acknowledged the inevitability of Augustus's posthumous apotheosis at the very end of his Metamorphoses, when he begs the gods with the following words, quote, "Let that day be far off, postponed beyond our lifetime, when Augustus shall leave behind the earth, which he governs with moderation, and shall mount up to heaven, where on high he shall grant favors to those who pray to him," unquote. But could Augustus's inevitable ascension into heaven have likewise been visually experienced during his lifetime by a visitor to the interrelated complex of official Augustan monuments of the northern Campus Martius? And, if so, was this in fact Augustus's intent, despite his official stance to the contrary? In short, was there an intentional visual ambiguity suggesting this in his Bildprogramm? I believe so, since Augustus built not just for his time, but for the ages, in order to perpetuate his memory, which for the Romans was the equivalent of immortality. In my January Morphomata talk, I attempted to explain psychoanalytically how Augustus created an image for himself that he became in the end. I suggest in my talk today that he also intentionally introduced visual ambiguity in his build program in order to circumvent his own official policy regarding his constitutional position in the state as first citizen, and thereby satisfy his own deep-rooted psychological needs. Such behavior can be described as ego-syntonic, which psychoanalysts define as a behavior in accord with one's ego and therefore consistent with one's ideal self-image. I also believe that the intentional visual ambiguity that Augustus introduced into his build program can be experienced today through the magic of digital technology and computer models, as we shall see. But first, it is necessary to consider briefly one final key monument that lay just to the south of the three great Augustan monuments in the northern Campus Martius. This is an important temple to all the gods, known of course as the Pantheon, which Augustus's son-in-law and right-hand man Marcus Agrippa originally built, along with his great building complex intended for the pleasure of the Roman people, indicated here in blue in the plan. The Pantheon was under construction around the time of the mausoleum of Augustus and was completed in 27 BC, the year that the Principate was founded. Heading north from Agrippa's great building complex, a viewer would have experienced from what I believe was the optimum viewing angle of all three Augustan monuments as reconceptualized here in my computer model. In fact, coming this way, probably over a pre-planned pathway, a viewer would have seen the southwest corner of the Areopagus with its richly decorated figural relief program. From this three-quarter optimum view could be seen together both the figure of Augustus as the inaugurator of the altar of Augustan peace and the figure of Augustus's ancestor Aeneas, father-founder of the Roman race, who is shown sacrificing to his ancestral Penates, who became the household gods of the Roman state. Though performing different ritual acts with heads covered according to Roman religious practice, both Augustus and Aeneas are posed in a very similar way, no doubt to evoke a visual and rhetorical comparison between the two figures. Aeneas, according to legend, was deified after his death, as was to be expected also in the case of Augustus. From the same optimum viewing angle, an observer would also have seen the great bronze image of Augustus atop his lofty mausoleum, as though he were already ascending to heaven to unite with the celestial gods as a new Deus. His greatest accomplishment in life, peace through victory, underscored and symbolized by the pendant solarium and Areopagus, would lead to his apotheosis after death, as symbolized by his great mausoleum. That he would have ascended to heaven in a chariot, as I propose here, rather than on foot, would also have evoked another form of rhetorical imagery. Ascension to the ethereal realm of the gods by means of a chariot was a long-established Greco-Roman tradition and reward for those who achieved greatness through their accomplishments in life. As we see in these representations, both the Greek hero Heracles and the Roman Romulus ascended to heaven in a chariot to become divinities. In the case of Romulus, one of the legends say that he was conveyed to heaven in the chariot of his father, the war god Mars, as we see in this relief scene on an Augustan Lares altar. According to legend, as he ascended, Romulus appeared to Proculus Iulius, who appears here in the scene as a testis or witness to this miraculous event. Likewise, the Roman senator Numerius Atticus testified under oath before the Senate that he had witnessed the soul of Augustus ascending to heaven. According to one legend, Romulus's miraculous ascension took place at the marsh known as the Palus Caprae in the Campus Martius, where Agrippa later erected the Pantheon, most likely because of the legend that was associated with this very location. In short, I believe that the image of Augustus in chariot atop his mausoleum was specifically intended to play off Romulus's ascension to heaven in a chariot to become a god, a legendary event deeply embedded in the collective memory of Romans. Moreover, Agrippa apparently had originally planned the Pantheon as an Augusteum, or hero shrine to Augustus, which was to contain a statue of Augustus among images of the celestial gods and the deified Julius Caesar. However, by the time of the Pantheon's completion, in the year that the Augustan Principate was founded, Augustus forbade this, permitting Agrippa to set up his statue only outside the consecrated space of the cella in the temple's porch. As suggested in the line-drawn reconstruction here, it was set up with a pendant statue of Agrippa as the founder of the temple. This alteration in plan, again, reflects the boundary separating the realms of the divine and human set by official policy of the newly founded Augustan Principate. In conclusion, my interpretation and recreation of the visual imagery implied in the three great Augustan monuments in the northern campus marshes represents an open reading, probably much in the same way that an ancient viewer could have created his own visual narrative of Augustus's predestined ascension into heaven in a chariot from his mountain-like mausoleum towering over the campus marshes in Rome. This imagery, I believe, was to be the inspiration in the following century for Hadrian's great mausoleum not far away from that of Augustus on the opposite bank of the Tiber, which is reported to have been crowned by a great bronze image of Hadrian in chariot. But that is a story for another time. Thank you.